In this video, I'm going to show you how you can de-stress your chronically tight and overworked hamstrings and relax them back to normal using methods that are far more effective and longer lasting than the traditional stretches you're probably used to seeing. So, if this sparks your interest, let's get started. The hamstring's primary job is to enable you to bend your knees. That's why in the most classic hamstring gym exercise, the hamstring curl, movements occur only through the knee joints. However, the hamstrings also cross the hips and tie into the pelvis. Because of this, they also function as secondary or assistant hip extensors, which means they help open up the hips, such as when we want to stand up from a chair and get into an upright position. It's with this assistant role of extending the hips that we run into some issues. The words assistant or secondary are key to understanding why this is the case. You see, the glutes are in fact our primary hip extensors, but nowadays, due to our modern sedentary lifestyles, we spend most of our day sitting on our bums, essentially paralyzing our glutes, which cause them to become lazy and weak over time. You might have heard terms such as sleepy glutes or gluteal amnesia, which describe this issue. So what happens when our glutes doze off and stop functioning optimally? We don't just stop extending our hips, right? I mean, we need hip extension to stand upright, to walk, sprint, pick things up, squat, and perform pretty much any other upright movement. Well, when the glutes have become lazy, what happens is the hamstrings step up to the plate and take charge. They're like, if the glutes are on vacation, we better compensate by doing some extra work. And this is where the issues start to occur. Our hamstrings already have a full-time job bending the knees. And now they have to do the job of our biggest muscles, our glutes, and extend the hips too. As you can imagine, like anyone who is overworked, they get stressed, tense, and eventually let you know they need a break. This was showcased so well in a published case study on a triathlete who kept on getting hamstring cramps during the running portion of his races. The researchers who suspected that lazy glutes were the problem put him through a bunch of tests and found that his glutes were indeed weak. They also did some sophisticated EMG, muscle activity tests, while he was running and found that his hamstrings were more active than they should have been. So the researchers got their triathlete working on what is the first step to fixing tight hamstrings, and that is to re-educate and strengthen the glutes. Re-education means building the motor control or mind-muscle connection required to get them going again. And strengthening the glutes is pretty self-explanatory. I won't go into all the details of the exact steps one needs to take to get the glutes working again, because that would fill up an entire video. But if this is something you want to see, let us know down in the comments and we can make it happen. What I'd like to point out, however, is that the exercises did not include even one hamstring stretching exercise. They were all aimed at getting the glutes active and strong again. Anyway, after 24 weeks of doing the program, the athlete's glute strength increased. He was able to do 3 consecutive triathlon races without a single hamstring cramp, and his hamstring flexibility improved by 17 and 18 degrees in the left and right legs respectively. Wait, what? His hamstring flexibility improved even though there were no hamstring stretches in his program? Yep, that's what happens when you give the hamstrings a break. They tend to relax. But activating and strengthening the glutes is just the first step to fixing tight hamstrings. So let's cover the rest. The next thing to pay attention to is posture, particularly the positioning of the hips, as this will affect the hamstrings due to the insertion points onto the pelvis. The single daily habit that most negatively affects the alignment of our hips is probably sitting, because we do so much of it. If we tally up all the instances in which we sit in a day, it amounts to as much as 12 or more hours. We don't realize it, but we sit on the commute to work, at work, during our lunch breaks, on the commute home, to eat dinner and socialize, and then finish off the day by sitting on the sofa to relax. That's a lot of sitting. Because the hips are flexed in that static closed position for so many hours, all the structures at the front of the hips get chronically tight. This chronic tightness pulls on the front of the pelvis, causing it to rotate in what is known as anterior pelvic tilt. And the more the pelvis is tilted forward, the greater the tension demand that is placed on the hamstrings. This is what you could be feeling when you describe tight hamstrings. So what we can do about this is to spend time in hip extension, which is the opposite to the flexion shape of sitting, as a way to stretch out those overly shortened structures. Hip mobility drills were actually added twice a week to the intervention plan of the triathlete with recurring hamstring cramps in the case study I mentioned earlier. So if they helped him, they are likely to help you too. Of course, if we keep up with the underlying theme of this video, which is to eliminate the root cause of the issue, then an even better long-term solution would be to try and reduce the amount of sitting we do each day. Otherwise, we are just fighting against our own bad habits. Standing desks are probably the biggest help in this regard. But over and above the preventative measures mentioned so far, the research also points to another thing we can do to improve anterior pelvic tilt and decrease hamstring tightness. That is to focus on core stability training, making it the third and final step on our list of measures to take to eliminate tight hamstrings. You see, the core muscles not only create spinal stability. Since they have so many attachment sites around the hips, they also realign and stabilize the pelvis. So by strengthening the core, issues such as excessive anterior pelvic tilt will reduce automatically, thereby minimizing the burden on our hamstrings. The effectiveness of core stability training for reducing hamstring stiffness has been proven in a number of studies. In one of these studies, 30 participants who were all found to have tight hamstrings were split into two groups. The first was the control group. These participants were told to just take it easy and do no specific training whatsoever. The other group, the experimental group, was put through a core stability training protocol. Before the experiment, the members of both groups showed no differences in their hamstring flexibility. However, after just 8 sessions of core stability training, the members of the experimental group improved their hamstring flexibility by an average of 22%, while the control group showed no improvement. So as you can see, despite it being generally accepted among non-professionals in the health and fitness realm that if a hamstring is tight, we should stretch it, in the science world, there is no such consensus. Stretching seems to merely be a band-aid for a symptom, in this case, a stiff muscle. But we should be looking deeper than just the superficial layer. The first and most appropriate question to ask is, what is causing the muscle to become tight? And now we can have a meaningful discussion, because while stretching might be helpful in the short term, if one doesn't address the root cause of the issue, then one will continuously need to stretch. I mean, think about it. If stretching was vital to maintain the right amount of length and tension in our muscles, then we would need to stretch every muscle on a regular basis. And that's just not the case. We have loads of muscles that we almost never spend dedicated time stretching, and they are fine. But there are just some, such as the hamstrings, that always feel tight. So logically, maybe it's not stretching or lack thereof that's the problem. Perhaps it's something happening on a deeper level that's causing these specific muscles to become tight. If we can get to the root cause and fix it, then perhaps we'll have a much longer term and more permanent solution. So here are the steps that one needs to take to eliminate hamstring tightness in summary. Step 1. Activate and strengthen the glutes through glute re-education and strengthening exercises. Step 2. Improve your hip mobility and reduce anterior pelvic tilt by spending as little time sitting as possible. But if you do end up sitting, then try to address tight hips by doing hip extension mobility drills. And step 3. Incorporate core stability training into your exercise regime. Anyway, if you enjoy our content, you know what to do. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.